Hi everybody. If you follow this channel, you'll know that it's not like me really to become engaged in contemporary political stuff. What I try to do is help people become better at studying history, and I kept the focus of this channel and all the other stuff I do online strictly to that. Otherwise, you can go off in all sorts of tangents, and people that want to learn about politics or have political views or whatever, they can find far better, far wiser, far more insightful people than me to help them. But the circumstances at the moment don't give me the luxury, really, of avoiding topics like contemporary politics any longer. We live in extraordinary and unprecedented times, and the first way that we really defend ourselves against what I fear is coming is to acknowledge the gravity of our situation. When I was growing up, when I was studying my A-levels in the early 1990s, the Cold War had just ended, and the idea that there would be fascist parties across Europe, fascist parties in the UK, that there would be members of parliament murdered by fascist terrorists, that there would be an extreme right-wing party that had previously had 2 MPs and one leader that had tried to get into parliament 7 times and failed, and now that party had taken on board Holocaust deniers and rape advocates and all these kinds of things. That was inconceivable. When I was growing up, there was the British National Party and what remained of the National Front, but these were the kind of the ludicrous fringe organisations of the far right that nobody really in politics textbooks when I was doing my A-levels took seriously at all. There was the Conservative Party, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, Scottish Nationalists, Plaid Cymru, and 1 or 2 other minor parties, and that was it. We don't live in those times any longer. UKIP has ceased to be an electoral force, but the recent news that right-wing Twitter trolls have joined the party with an influx of 500 of their followers shows that it is morphing into something else. It's morphing into a more openly fascist organisation. This is not the first time, obviously, that Great Britain has had an openly fascist organisation. The British Union of Fascists, the Empire League after the war, the National Front, the British National Party, all these parties have existed. But we are experiencing them in almost unprecedented historical circumstances. They're unprecedented because the prevailing model of economics that has governed the world since about 1989, what its critics call neoliberalism, has broken down. The way in which the world economically functions has stopped working, and arguably it never really worked. That means that between the collapse of neoliberalism in 2008, with the economic crisis then, and the failure to present the world with a viable economic model, that we've experienced a decade of economic stagnation. And it's in those sorts of times, those sorts of periods, that extreme politics tends to emerge. For example, the 1930s. And there is seemingly no current end in sight to the economic troubles that we face, and with Brexit there's going to be a whole lot more. So we have to be honest now and acknowledge that we are facing an unprecedented threat to democratic life in Great Britain. Not only are there groups like UKIP who are moving to the fascist right, and terrorist groups like National Action and others, but also there are emerging within mainstream political discourse the kinds of ideas which would have been considered unpalatable and unacceptable only 5 years ago. In the same period of time that the American President Donald Trump has been imprisoning children on the Texas-Mexican border. The Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, has lauded and praised him and has hoped really to present himself as a similar kind of populist figure. How successfully is only time will tell. And if you look at the rest of Europe, from Poland to Hungary, now to Italy, and if you look further afield to countries like India and the Philippines, there is a wave of resentment around the world based on the economic crises that we have faced as a planet in the last decade, that is moving people away from the free market economic globalization that ruled up until 2008 and towards a more insular, nationalist form of societies. And it is on this wave of resentment against the perceived ills of globalization that these figures thrive. We need new economics, we need new thinking, and that hopefully will come. But in the meantime, we need one thing: we need solidarity. Solidarity between communities, between men and women, between every aspect of society. Because there are people whose sole political goal, whose sole political logic, whose sole political rationale is division. It's how they operate. It's how they see politics as working. You divide, you favour one group over another, hey presto, you have power, and then you can divide the spoils of society towards your friends. And this is what is facing all of us. And the only way that they can succeed is with consent. Societies that refuse to consent towards division, refuse to cooperate in being lied to and deluded and frightened into demonizing the other, they never have any problem with populist, fascist figures. Instead, these are societies that embrace a kind of a healthier, more democratic future. So that's the only takeaway from this, and I promise I'll never bother you with a political speech again. Refuse to be divided. Refuse division. Refuse to be lied to. Refuse fear. Embrace love. Embrace compassion. Embrace each other. Stand together. Solidarity, one and all, and refuse the darkness. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.